sensitive kids, very sensory sensitive children where emotional dysregulation is kind of characteristics, louder, larger, lots of people environments. Changes and transitions aren't great sometimes for families, especially the busier they are. The more sensory that, overloaded, they feel dysregulated. Behavioral ramifications are part of this.
Right.
So one way we help with that is the kind of charting and behavioral positive reinforcement will help them begin to regulate themselves.
I actually had I had a family that I worked with that, the child had a lot of disruptive behaviors, and it was because, again, the child felt very out of control. And one example that I gave the family, so not only the child, but I gave even the parents to make this goal, because, again, they modeled it for their child, was to use a word every time they noticed that they were going from we use kind of like a 0 to 10 scale, 10 being like the most out of control and 0 being the most, controlled. And a 10 was like when they were at their max, like they were very disruptive. So what I taught the family was to use a word. I think they used, I forget what word they used, but they used this word every single time the child or even the parent maybe felt like they were at their max. Like, let's say the word was max or something like that. And so the child would get a positive reinforcement every time, instead of maybe punching the wall, or every time they would storm upstairs, they would just look at their parent and be like, max. And that would allow their parent to know, okay, my child just needs to take a deep breath. That's okay. And they're not getting mad at their child, because again, sometimes we all have some behavioral things that we have to manage, but the child was learning that even when I was reaching my max, and then I can kind of start to use some of those coping skills to take a deep breath. And the parents would actually use max when they were starting to feel overwhelmed, to kind of show their child, this happens to me even sometimes. So even creating almost a word with your family, or having a specific family meeting to kind of discuss how we all will navigate it together is a great method for helping a family kind of navigate that as well.
Yeah, and that's authoritative. You're not, shutting them down. You're not dismissing it. You're not ignoring it. You're being very respectful to your child. And look, you go from 0 to 60 pretty quick. And here's some ways we can help in this situation. What word would you like to use? Here's some suggestions, or pick your own. And you're going to laugh, but when we talk about adding people to the club to verbalize when they're adding them through the ritual sound approach, the RSA, I had a little boy that loved the word poop. So he called it his poop club. I wasn't going to fight him on it. He loved it, and he called it, they're added to my poop club. And just that funny word was anxiety lowering for him. And that's what we used. And so that worked. So assuming the word is appropriate to use, I would be very accepting of whatever word it is that they use to represent either a feeling or how to navigate. And that gives them the control. He decided that word. I didn't decide it.
Right.
So I think that's, how do you deal with discipline? Let's talk about dealing with discipline consequences from an authoritative parenting style. So a child did something not appropriate. They did hit their sibling. They lied to you about something. They disrespected somebody else. They didn't follow through on a route. How do you deal with that?
So I think, again, when we think about those ingredients, like the warmth and control, still, let's say, giving your child a timeout, or still saying, okay, I think it's time to go to your room. Let's take a deep breath. Let's say they just hit their sibling, but then allowing them to kind of calm down and go into the room, maybe have a conversation with them about what happened, what was going on with you. This is why we're taking a break in your room, because that still was not appropriate behavior. We still need to understand that that's not okay. But I also want to talk with you about what's kind of going on. And so you're talking with them. You're still allowing your child to kind of have that space where they can be open with you and you're listening, but you're also showing them at the same time, that wasn't okay. We have to learn that that's not a behavior that we should be doing, but I want to hear you out. I want to hear kind of what's going on at the same time.
Yeah, if a child is able to handle that, little kids can't.
Depending on the age of the child.
Because we have so many sensory sensitive kids and emotional dysregulation, what I would say to parents is journal these difficult behaviors. When are they occurring? What was right before? Were they hungry? Were they tired? Were they overwhelmed, underwhelmed? Was it a really loud, overwhelming environment? Were they bored? Did they just get home from school and they acted out because we were expecting them to do something else and they needed downtime? Parents can learn so much, look, listen, and learn from journaling some of these challenges, like difficult behaviors, and then taking those difficult behaviors and as a parent, learning how to help them. So if they come home from school and they like to vegetate, like I have 4 children, all 4 liked something different after school. Your sister loved to kind of hang out and just look at a TV set and relax. Whereas maybe you or your brother, one of your brothers would go out in the backyard and run around. Like everybody's different. And so respecting that, giving that time to an extent, and then kind of coming back to what they need to do. So maybe homework isn't right when you get home from school. Maybe it's after dinner for one child. You start to figure out what's best, but journal that. What were the triggers to cause some of these challenging behaviors? And then develop your positive reinforcement charting of kind of flipping it to a positive and being like on board. So if you know your child is hungry after school because they had difficulty eating in the classroom, then maybe have a snack in the car going home. I mean, I remember doing that for my kids. We would have a bag of snack because you run around the days long. And just by having that snack, regulated your blood sugars, you just were more calm rather than not eating. And then I'm trying to figure out, why is this child acting this way? They were hungry. Let's just give them a snack or suggest snack time in our routine. And maybe we have snack time on our chart. So what I'm trying to convey to our listeners is it's not just one thing.
Right.
It's not just one thing, do this and this is going to happen. And again, we're not even like, here we are talking about treating selective mutism. That's the expertise, right? We're not even talking about talking with anything we're talking about today. But this is part of the whole person approach. This is part of knowing what your child needs, how to support them in a respectful way, how to parent them so that it lowers their anxiety, they feel in control, and they can journey through this treatment process, which the more authoritative you are, the more you treat the whole person, the quicker treatment is.
Yeah. And I think the reason why we're also not even talking about talking is because this type of parenting can benefit with any type of child or any type of, disorder that someone might have. So, I mean, this could be a child that has, is on the spectrum or has ADHD or, might just have some speech and language. They might not even have SM. This could be a sibling of the child with SM, right? So I think just knowing that authoritative parenting is really, really beneficial for honestly anyone, because I think it's just about connecting with your child, understanding, but also giving them that structure at the same time.
Yeah, no, I think we've talked about a lot. I want to end with the importance of choices with boundaries. Giving our children as many choices as possible to either doing their exposures, their social communication goals, their schedules, helping them write the schedule with you, but you're setting up the boundaries. And some easy examples are routines in the evening, like we talk about bedtime. And again, this is for younger children typically, but even for teens, like maybe they don't do well staying up till 2 a.m, playing on their device and they're overstimulated. So you have to set the boundaries, right? When devices end, so many hours a day that they're doing it. But for younger children, maybe bedtime's 9 o'clock, but they're kind of hanging out with you, reading a story, or just like hanging out, talking. I think it's important that parents give them that time in the evening to cuddle and talk. And they need to shower or take a bath, but they can't miss out on some of these things. But if the child is running around and it's 8:30 and you've told them by like 7:30 that, hey, we need to go up, we need to clean the playroom up or organize your desk, and then you need to shower, and they know what their routine is and they're still messing around, they're going to miss out on something. So you're kind of giving them the choices of what's more important, me hanging with you or you just running around and just kind of like goofing off, because I can't do both because bedtime's 9 o'clock. So you're setting the kind of rules, but they have the choices. And so if they have like a tantrum because you promised you lay with me every night and we talk, yeah, but you made that decision. You made the decision tonight that you were going to finish, drawing in your drawing book, and that's great, but maybe tomorrow you'll get done sooner. So it's how you kind of set the boundaries. The same with alternative meals. That's a big one for me. Our sensitive kids may need alternative meals, right? But they can't have like a chocolate chip cookie for dinner. That's just not part of it. But we set it up with, hey, here are alternative meals. Pick one of them in advance. They do it. They help prepare it because they don't want lamb chops. That's okay. I may not like lamb chops either. But they can't have whatever they want or say during the meal, Mom, I don't want this anymore. Go get me a chocolate chip cookie. And the mom jumps up and does it. oh, that's not good, because what you're doing is you're a pawn to your child. That creates out of control for them. You're now like the permissive parent. Like, you see what I mean? How it all feeds in. We hear choices a lot, that word choice, and we think choices. Do you want red or blue? Do you want an apple or a banana? Like, in terms of social communication, because they hear the right answer second, which minimizes their need to think and process. I'm not talking about those types of choices. I'm talking about choices in what they're doing on a daily basis, where you set the boundaries.
I mean, I know that we've been talking a lot about structure and predictability and like calendars and things like that. So if you have, like, let's say a bedtime routine, like you were saying, giving the choice, let's say it's 8:45 to 9 o'clock is like the last activity you're doing before bed. Maybe there's a list of like choices. Like, we could either finish your puzzle, you can either play on your tablet, you can, I can read you a bedtime story. And so you're still giving them that choice within that time frame. So that's another example.
Yeah, I think it's all about giving them control and transferring control. And we'll put some good resources in the podcast episode to help with authoritative parenting. Listen to me. We don't want to push authoritarian. It's authoritative parenting. So we'll definitely do that. And again, for our listeners, your treatment providers could be spending sessions going over this and helping with parenting. I can't tell you how many times over the years parents have shared with me that just by what they learned, how they learned it, how to parent their child is what made the biggest difference in treatment for their child. It wasn't just the exposures, which are critical, but it's how to implement the exposures, how to help that child on a daily basis get through life.
Yeah.
That whole person approach is just so critical. So thank you, listeners. Any last minute comments, Jenna?
No, I mean, I think I know that people have been asking about a second edition from our first podcast about the parenting. So I hope this was really helpful. And I definitely think, definitely talking to your provider about some of these things is really important, right? So like, even if you have weekly sessions for your child, maybe every fifth session is just spent with the parents where we can talk about some of these things with you. So we're always here to help navigate. But again, I hope that this was very helpful for you to gain some insight.
Yeah. And I think depending on, like, when I see a family, I can assess how much parenting needs to be done, how much parenting work. And some families come in where it's not the severity of their child's mutism that dictates the progress. Frankly, it's the whole picture. It's the whys, but it's also the parenting. I would say parenting is the number one factor in progression of communication in terms of being quicker or slower. And so anything we can do to help a family, we're going to do so that they can parent properly. So I thank you, listeners, for this opportunity to educate you, and look forward to the next podcast.
Thank you.